Hello and good evening to people in America. Good morning to people in the UK and the rest of the world. I'm very pleased to be joined by Riley Dutton, the co-creator of Roll20 app for virtual tabletop gaming. I'm Simon from RPG Geek. I've got some questions I'm going to ask to Riley that he's going to answer for me. I've enabled the questions and answers app for Google Hangouts. So if you've got any questions yourself that you want to ask Riley, feel free to use the app to ask me, and I'll pass them on to him. But good morning to you, Riley. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a real pleasure and a real honour to talk to you. Your system has enabled gaming between people that have never met. So I've used the system myself today for several hours, and we've had a really good time. So
Great, glad to hear
several people have actually said to me, when you speak to Riley, say thank you to him. So, Riley,
it.
on behalf of several of my friends, thank you very much for what you've done.
No problem.
But it's your forum. Let's hear from you. Um, tell me a little bit about yourself, not the application, not Roll20, but about Riley. How did you get into gaming? How did you get into computing? What do you do?
Okay, well, I got into computing earlier than gaming, so I've been interested in computers since I was very young, about 6 or 8 years old, and I was one of those kids who, while everyone else was out playing, sports and whatnot during the summer, I was checking out library books on how to program C back in the day. So that kind of led to a kind of a career in developing applications. I kind of focused in on the web as kind of my focus point. And then gaming for me started in college, well, tabletop gaming anyway, and getting really seriously into RPGs. When I was at college, we had a pretty large group of friends who would get together and play D&D 4th edition, and had a really great time doing that. Fell in love with the open-endedness of the storytelling. Growing up, I would play video games growing up, and just RPGs were this refreshing new way to, have the experiences that I learned to love in video games, but without the boundaries. We could tell the story that we wanted to tell. You could go anywhere, do anything, as long as you had a great game master who was there to kind of guide you along. So fast forward, a couple of years, and college is over, and we're all moving away from each other. And I kind of got out. I didn't know anyone who played games, and I was kind of shy about reaching out to the local gaming community. Where I moved to. This is when I moved to Wichita, Kansas. And I heard from one of my friends, Nolan, who now works with me on Roll20, and he told me, I'm playing a new game with all these friends. It's awesome. And it really just made me jealous about the fact that he was getting to play RPGs and I wasn't anymore. And I said, we really need to play that again. And so we kind of started talking about it, and I said, there's got to be a way to play an RPG game online. This was in 2008-ish or so, no, I'm sorry, this would be in like 2012. And I was like, surely there's a way to play RPGs online. And so I started looking around, and there were some systems out there that could do it for us, but they didn't fit with exactly the way that I thought it should work, the way that my group thought it should work. And so being the, I guess, silly person I was at the time, I was like, I'm a web developer. I'm just going to take a stab at this. I'm going to make something just for our group to play. It won't take me very long to put a basic prototype together. So I did that, and we started playing with it for a month or two, and everyone loved it, and they said, this is really great. You should see if anybody else out there would be interested in using this. And that's around the time that Nolan really encouraged me to do the Kickstarter campaign. And I thought this was going to be a giant catastrophe. Like, I was like, there's no way anyone else out there is going to be interested in this, or it's going to be something that only we're going to want to use. But I put it out there, and with help from Nolan and with help from Richard, another one of my friends who's in my gaming group, who now also works with us. And it just kind of took off from there, and the Kickstarter campaign was a success, and we've just been growing ever since. So I guess I kind of started talking about the application, not me, but it's very tied in together, the story of how it all came together. It was a very personal reason that I made it, and I was just very happy to find out that I was not the only person having this problem, and that Roll20 as an application was able to help not just me. So that was amazing for us. So
There was nothing else available that would fill that niche for you?
We're not by any means the first virtual tabletop. There are definitely others out there, and there are ones that existed before Roll20, and I definitely looked at those, and like I said, I had a very specific vision for how I thought it should work. And if you find there's like a Reddit post from me from like 2012 where I kind of outline my idea of how I think it should work in the RPG subreddit, like Ancient History now. But just talking about it, and I was very focused on GM storytelling. I was very focused on the video chat feature, which no one else was really doing at that time. I was very focused on just making it really easy to use, and just sharing a link and then having everyone in the game. So there were things that I had a very specific vision for how I thought it should work, and so there were others out there, but they didn't match what I thought it should do, so I made my own, basically.
Right. So the original development of it was sort of bespoke for what you actually wanted, rather than
For
what you
our
wanted other
group,
people
yeah,
to.
it was really developed for it. I mean, literally, I would sit down, and I was actually, I believe, GMing the group at the time, and I would sit down and I would say, what are we going to do this week? Okay, I need handouts. Okay, I'm going to make a handouts feature. I need a character sheet. Okay, here's a basic character sheet. So there was like literally this 2-month period where every single feature that got put into Roll20, this was before the Kickstarter campaign, was basically based around what our group needed that week to put in our
Sure.
game.
That's a good
So
place to start, isn't it?
yeah, it was a very good place to start. So
But you started with fourth edition. So how
yes.
did you? At what stage did you realise this was something that other people could use?
Basically, as soon as, and this is where I did not even completely realize the breadth and width of tabletop RPG gaming back when we were getting started with this project. I knew there was more than fourth edition out there, obviously, but now knowing as many systems as I do and having experienced so many from going to Gen Con and places like that, it just blows my mind how many different ways people have figured out to play tabletop RPG games, which is amazing. But pretty much as soon as we put the Kickstarter campaign, we started getting suggestions. We had a very lengthy 8-minute demo video that kind of accompanied it, where we showed off what the program would do currently. And from that moment on, people had suggestions on that I needed to support this game, especially when it came to the dice mechanics early on. We would get request after request after request for different dice mechanics for different games. And that's kind of still followed through to today. Literally today, with a lot of the direction Roll20 goes in is focused on just serving the community's needs, and they tell us, I really need to do X. There's this new system out that does Y, and we really try to listen to that and accommodate that whenever possible. We definitely have, like I said, we want to be system independent. We don't want it to be something that caters to any specific system too much. So sometimes people kind of get disappointed because we won't add a very, very specific mechanic for their game directly into Roll20. But that's kind of always been our philosophy from the start. Even though I played 4th edition mostly, we as a group decided we wanted it to be a system independent platform. So.
Okay. So how do you get knowledge of those different systems then? How do you find out what the systems need? Is it just feedback, or do you investigate yourself?
We've tried a whole host of things. We tried everything. I've probably played now, 7, 8, 10 different systems at this point, myself at least. Thoroughly played, not just skimmed the rule book or heard about. I've sat down and played multiple sessions. So that's part of it, is my own personal kind of investigation, and we as a dev team sit down a lot of times and try. In fact, we just about a week ago, if that, sat down and played The Strange for the first time. On live streamed it. So we as a dev team will sit down and play new games that we haven't played before to kind of get a feel for their system and how it works in Roll20. So for a while, about a year ago, we were actually doing several live streams of the devs playing different games. We did 13th Age. I'm trying to remember what else we did. I think we did Savage Worlds. So just to kind of see us play it, and we called it Will It Play, sort of like a play off that Will It Blend series you may have seen on YouTube, where basically, we take a system I don't know anything about, and then it's like I'm under the gun to see if I can make it work in Roll20. So we did that for a while. And then, we also would just ask people if they would invite us to their game. So if there would be a spot for a dev team member to just come sit in on their game and see how they're playing it. We've played some, like Arkham Horror sticks out in my mind as a game that I never would have thought to play on Roll20. I don't know if you've played it. It's this really complicated board game.
I've played hours and hours of it.
Okay, and I actually only played it in person for the first time at this last Gen Con, which wasn't that long ago. But I had played it on Roll20 before because a very avid player of it invited us to their game, so we could sit in and watch them play it with them, and kind of get a feel for how these massive amounts of cards and all this other stuff that they were doing in Roll20 looked and felt. So there's a whole host of things that we do to try to get as much feedback from the community, but also personal experience with those systems. Because at the end of the day, we'll get a suggestion that says, hey, add support for X mechanic or add X feature. And that's great, and we do listen to those and try to do those. But at the same time, it's even better if we can get personal experience with it and really see like the reasoning behind how that mechanic works, and also how if we can add a feature that works with that mechanic in that game, but would also support future games that might have a similar mechanic. That's the golden ticket. That's the goal. Is never to just say we're adding support for Savage Worlds initiatives. Like, that's never what we want to do. What we want to do is say, okay, there obviously are games out there that use the card deck for initiative systems. How do we add a way that you could play Savage Worlds or other games in the future that might use an initiative-based card deck to drag and drop it onto your turn order, to sort the turn order based on, the card name in the suit, that kind of stuff. That, that way, again, it's not just about adding support for Savage Worlds. It's about how do we make the platform better for, any game that might use a mechanic like that. So.
Okay. So is it more driven then by what you see as a need or what people ask you for, the development of the site?
Well, what I see as a need is basically the same as what they're asking me for. Like, I listen, that's where we determine where the need is. If Roll20 was only for me and what I wanted, it would have been done a long time ago. Like, when we started playing 4th edition in it, there was a long time ago where it was like, this is really good for playing 4th edition. This is great for playing 4th edition. And for the things that we played 4th edition, the way that we played 4th edition. So it's really has nothing to do anymore with what I want personally. That's may have how it started. For our group, that may be how it started, but it's definitely become a community initiative, a community-driven project where it's really about listening to all these hundreds of thousands of people and trying to filter through all of that feedback and try to find the common threads and say, okay, we're hearing a lot of people say that this is important to them. Let's see if we can make that happen.
Okay, excellent. So tell me about, is it Nolan, your co-creator?
He's one of them. Nolan and Richard are the two co-creators.
Yeah. So did your friends all start at the same time as you?
You mean on the project?
No, I mean in gaming.
Oh, they were all in my gaming group in college. I know that Nolan might have had some previous experience. He was in a Magic the Gathering and whatnot, I know, when we were younger. Nolan and I actually went to high school together as well, and then we all ended up at college together, and then Richard was one of our college roommates. So I can't speak for them completely. It's funny, I don't think I've actually sat down and written down their entire gaming history with them before, but I know that we probably weren't all very seriously into it until college. So
who, on a day-to-day basis, who runs it? Is it you or Nolan?
All three of us. We're all full-time on it right now. So
okay, so this is a full-time job.
Yeah, it's a full-time job for all three of us right now, and we're actually getting ready to hire 2 other full-time positions. So it's grown tremendously, and with 600,000 users. There's a lot of work to do.
Sure.
So there's just the amount of customer support we do, and answering forum posts, answering emails, dealing with all kinds of technical support issues, dealing with all of that, plus trying to add on new features, plus trying to spread the word about Roll20, doing interviews like this, going to conventions, plus just trying to spread the word about tabletop gaming in general to people who maybe don't know anything about RPGs, which is, we do a lot of the people, something like 1,000 new people a day sign up for Roll20, and of those, my guesstimate is that at least half to 75%, this is their first experience trying to figure out what an RPG is. We get that we've just commissioned Kristen, one of our moderators, just made an awesome series of videos that are just basic information about like what is an RPG, how do I pick an RPG system, how do I play an RPG, because we're trying to take these people who have just heard the word Dungeons and Dragons and Googled how do I play Dungeons and Dragons online and end up at our site, and we're trying to funnel them into the hobby and get them set up with a game to play, hopefully through our Looking for Groups system. Match them up with a mentor if we can, like a GM who knows what they're doing, or if not, giving them the tools, hopefully, to start playing on their own with their own friend group. So.
Okay, so this is a full-time job for you. So talk me through your work day then. You roll up at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, or. And
Well,
what do
we
you
all
do?
work remotely, so like I said, we were talking before this, and I live in Kansas. Nolan lives in Las Vegas, and Richard lives in Washington D.C. So we're spread out all over the country, which is why we needed Roll20 in the first place. And so since we work remotely and we're in different time zones and all that, we don't have kind of a traditional, 9 to 5, everybody's in the office type of schedule. It's much more kind of throughout the day. I might be at an interview at 9 o'clock at night. I might get woken up at 1 a.m. when the server goes down. That happened to me like last night or the night before. Um, so that's part of it. I'd say I spend about, a good chunk of time is just answering emails and answering forum posts, checking bug reports, that kind of thing. And then probably about 50% of my time I spend developing new features for the program throughout the day, programming and that kind of thing. And part of the reason we're hiring the 2 new positions is to increase the amount of time we actually get to spend developing new stuff. Because right now, as the program's grown, but our time resources have remained the same, the customer support and all that has started to eat into the actual time spent developing new stuff quite a bit, which is something we're trying to, we know the community obviously wants support, which we're happy to give, but we also know they want new stuff. So we're trying to make sure that we have the resources to give them both. So.
And one of the tough things about when your hobby becomes a job is it's not your hobby anymore. So
Sure.
is it still fun?
I still have a lot of fun. Like I said, we played The Strange, like I said, last week, and it was a blast. I had a really good time doing that. But one of the things about it becoming your job, I am not in a ongoing long-term campaign right now, sadly. So I'm investigating a few different options. I'm thinking about running a sandbox campaign with some friends. But I do a lot of one-offs and that kind of thing. But it's funny because the reason you start Roll20 is to make time in your schedule to game, and then it's like, oh, my schedule's so packed, I don't have time to game. So, I definitely think that's part of it is, you have to it's kind of like you're prioritizing the community's needs of, Roll20 over your own needs of, I would like to sit down and play a game. So that's something, and that we're happy to do that. That's kind of what we see as our, what we've been told is necessary and what we want to do. So, but yeah, it's definitely one of those things where you wish you could have more time to actually sit down and play a game every now and then.
Sure. So you're able to sort of cut the whole work thing off between the work and the hobby,
Sure.
or does it all sort of roll into one? I mean,
Yeah, well,
that work?
I don't think I could ever sit down and play a game in Roll20 like we did last week without at the same time taking notes about, oh, I've been meaning to do this forever, and this is a bug, and we should really try changing this. So I think that, and even when I'm sitting down at an in-person table, I played Settlers of Catan the other day, and I couldn't help but think the entire time I was playing, oh, this is interesting, and this is an interesting mechanic that we don't support very well, and it's so even when you're playing a game, you're still in the back of your mind taking notes and thinking of things that you can do to improve. That it's kind of it's kind of like your baby. You're always thinking about it, and you're always thinking of ways you can hopefully help it grow into something better and all that kind of stuff. So.
What do you think you'd be doing if Roll20 hadn't come along?
Well, at the time when we started Roll20, I was working as a developer at a nonprofit school for children with autism, and I was working on a system for collecting data on their behaviors to kind of help the caregivers do a better job assisting them. So I'd probably still be doing that if Roll20 hadn't come along, and which was a great job, and I really loved it. But I loved gaming just a little bit more. So.
Okay, so I mean, Roll20 it can do a lot of things. What can't it do? Can it really replace face-to-face gaming?
We get asked that question a lot. Is Roll20 supposed to replace face-to-face gaming? And my answer to that question is always no. That's not the goal of Roll20 at all. The goal is not to replace face-to-face gaming. There's something about being together in a game in person around a shared table that no matter how good the software gets and no matter how good video chat and webcams are, you're never going to be able to replicate that experience, 100%. However, there is something to be said for providing a tool that, like I said, when we started, the goal, I thought of it as, we're helping groups that are going to be spread across by distance after college and whatnot get back together again, or whatever reason you've been, as time goes on, people move apart from each other, but they want to keep that group together. And it's grown beyond that into people using it to find, like I said, games for the first time in their lives, to people who are finding groups completely virtually, who've never met these people before in their lives, but are sitting down and play a game with them, which I think happens a lot at VirtuaCon, for example. Um, and people even use Roll20 to play in-person games to augment that game. So they want a digital map, or they want to put it on the projector screen on the big screen so that they can, chat about it with their party and all that good stuff. We even have people who all bring laptops, and they do the handouts and the digital character sheets and all that on their laptops, but they still play, with a board, in front of them. We even have people, who still roll physical dice but play on Roll20. I think, I don't think that it has to be this bright line between in-person gaming, virtual gaming, never the two shall meet. They're at war with each other at all. I think that each has a lot to learn from the other, and I think that they can augment each other really well. If I used to use paper character sheets forever, even when I played Roll20 games, I just liked having that paper in front of me. It made me feel like I was at the table. So, and like I said, I totally understand people who want to have, that projector map up so they can show their players that really cool location they've been working on and all that stuff. So it's definitely not supposed to replace in-person gaming. I think it can augment it, and I think that it's an excellent option for people who can't make in-person gaming happen for whatever reason. But I would never say that the goal is to replace in-person gaming by any means.
What do you think about people that bring laptops to the gaming table in real life, face-to-face gaming?
Yeah,
Can that add to the experience?
I think it can if it's done well. There's always the danger, and this happens online too, of distraction. People, it's very hard when you're playing in an online game or an in-person game with a laptop to not open up that other tab and get on Reddit or do whatever it is you might want to do to keep your focus on the game. So I think that's something that you have to really work with your players and just tell them, let's focus in here and let's pay attention to the table. That said, if you do it well, I think it can be great. There's a game that I played. It wasn't a specific RPG system or anything, but somebody had posted it to the RPG subreddit about 2 years ago, and it was sort of a murder mystery game where the GM passed out notes they all had amnesia, and you'd pass out notes to the players throughout the game to kind of like, as they were called, memories. And the way we played it, we all had phones with us. And so instead of trying to deal with, paper note passing and making it really obvious when someone recovered a memory, I was able to kind of, secretly text people. So I think depending on the game you're playing, it can really add to the experience to have some kind of technology there to help. But I don't think it's for everybody, and I definitely think that if you're not careful with it, it can lead to a lot of distraction at the table. So.
I suppose it's just like the next version of passing little folded up notes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Send an email to somebody.
Yeah, well, and there's people who, again, just enhancing in-person games. There's people who use the art roll. We have every campaign on Roll20 has its own forum where you can chat with the players in the game, and some people don't actually play on Roll20 but use those forums as the place where they game between sessions. Some people like to do play-by-posts in there. Other people just use it to organize their games and to keep track of everybody who's coming to this session. Don't forget it's at 8 o'clock. Let's talk about what happened last session. Let's recap. So I think that there's no reason to limit yourself to, I have to use paper. It has to all be in person. As long as it's done well and it serves the game, then I'm all for it.
Okay, so let's talk about the app itself. How long has it been going now?
So 2012, I believe, March of 2012, May of 2012 was when the Kickstarter campaign was. I think we went into open beta September 2012. So it's been almost exactly 2 years since we went to open beta.
Okay, so I imagine it's been quite a sort of steep development curve.
Yeah.
Tell us about what's happened in the last year. What's new in the last year?
The last year, that's going to be hard for me to think about just in that, like, you know what I mean? It's such a blur. I'm not sure if I can remember just the last year, but... okay,
well, tell us about some of the newer things that you've got.
Sure, we just... let's see, we just went to Gen Con, and we won an ENnie award for the best software, which was pretty awesome. And I'm actually going to pull up our changelog here so I can remember what the most recent updates were, just because I'm blanking on it. The main thing that we did most recently was our data delve update, and that introduced the digital character sheets. That was back in late May, so about June 2014. That was our last huge update. We've done others since then that had minor features and bug fixes and whatnot, but the digital character sheets were something that at the very beginning, everybody wanted them. And I was staunchly, I won't say I was completely against it, but I just figured if you want that complicated of a character sheet, use a paper one. Like, we had characters in the game system, but they were basically just a place where you could store notes and some basic attributes. And my take on it was you can store, things you're going to use to roll a lot, like strength and intelligence, or maybe a bluff check. But you don't, like, looking at a Pathfinder sheet, do you really need like 600 attributes for that character all stored in the game? And everybody from the last 2 years has been, we need character sheets. We've got to have those character sheets. Why don't I have character sheets yet? And finally, I guess it finally got through my thick head that this might be a good idea to do it. And so we sat down, and the other thing is I don't like to add a feature unless we can make it easy to use and, just like a no-brainer. Like, a lot of other applications in the RPG industry, I think, sometimes get really bogged down in too many options, or, way too complicated, too many dialogue boxes, just makes it really hard to figure out what's going on. And that might be fine for a GM, but looking at it from a player perspective, especially a newer player, it's so nice when you can figure out a way to do it that they can jump in and intuitively know what's going on and just start using the program. So finally, I thought we sat down, we figured out a really good way to do character sheets where they could look very similar to, paper character sheets if that's what you wanted, or you could do a totally, new digital layout. Is up to you. We could track, like, I think our current Pathfinder sheet has something like 700 different fields, things that it tracks, and then you can use all those in macros. It just really opened up the ability to do a crazy amount of stuff with the automatic rolling and whatnot. And the coolest part to me is that we added the ability to put little buttons on the sheet to make rolls. So, like, right next to the int stat, there might be a button to click, to make an int check, or just to, make a bluff check and whatnot. And for newer players, that's just so awesome, because you can basically tell them, okay, open up your sheet, here's your stats, and okay, we're doing a combat encounter. Do you see that little button next to your sword attack? Just click that little button, and then it'll make the roll for them, and then you can kind of explain to them, why that roll is the way it is, but you don't have to dive into all that right away. So many times I think, players sit down to play something, especially crunchier systems, and they get bogged down in the math, and it's just too complicated. It goes, whoosh, way over their head, and you lose them. You lose the ability to have the narrative going. You lose the ability to have the game flow go quickly. So it's so nice to just kind of ease them into that. And then eventually they do get to a point where they understand all those mechanics and they understand, what's affecting that. But it's so nice just to be able to be like, there's a button there. You can totally click that since it's your first time, and then we'll move on from there. So the character sheets, I'd say, are the biggest thing we've added recently. And the coolest part too on that is, rather than us trying to sit down, like you said, and understand every system and every character sheet, which I knew we could never do, we actually made the sheets to where anybody in the community can contribute a sheet for their favorite system. So it's all totally open source. There's actually a GitHub repo for those of you out there who might know what GitHub is and who are programmers, where you can go and you can actually contribute, edit current sheets, create new sheets, and we have something like 70 different character sheets now for 70 different systems, which is just amazing to me that the community has come forth and said,
I want 70.
70, yeah, 70 different sheets. So people have really, said, I mean, obviously we have things like Pathfinder and D&D, but we have, my gosh, just, any tiny system you can think of. Now it has its, and that's the great part about Roll20, because the scale has gotten so large that even if it's this tiny little system that barely anybody has played before, there's probably still 100 or 200 people that are playing it on Roll20, because, the scale is so large. So that, now that they get a sheet for that system on Roll20. So that's, that's really neat to see that kind of support from the community for their favorite games.
Okay. So, in the last year, I've been asked specifically about the wiki that you've got. Has there been much in the way of updates on the wiki in the last year?
Well, we update the wiki every time that we come out with a new feature. So the wiki is kind of our community collection of documents and how-tos on how to use the program. So it's sort of like the online instruction manual for Roll20, only it's gotten to be hundreds of pages long, and but like I said, it's a combination of our effort and also effort from the community. We have a lot of people who go in and we'll just make minor corrections, or we'll add entire pages of information on, especially how to play specific systems in Roll20. A lot of people like to do that. They'll go in and say, I love playing Savage Worlds on Roll20. Here's an entire page on how I do it and how you can get started using it, all that stuff. So we haven't changed any of the core functionality of the wiki. It's just a wiki at the end of the day. It's just a collection of documents that people can edit. But as far as documentation goes, we've added several new pages. I'd say probably 10 to I don't know, 30 new pages over the last year. Every time we add, like when we added character sheets, there's a giant new page of character sheets. When we added, Quantum Roll, which is our random dice engine thing that we updated, whole new page on that. So, yeah.
There's several aspects when you're looking at the how-to pages on Roll20. Several of them are dealt with by way of a sort of a video. What was the reasoning behind that?
Well, I don't know. I guess people just seem to like watching videos, especially when it comes to something like a software program. Sometimes describing it via text gets really unwieldy. Like, open up the thing in the top left corner that looks like a question mark, and then click it, and then move to the right. So it's just screenshots help with that, and we do a lot of screenshots. But even better than that is a video, because you can just watch somebody use it with their mouse and see exactly what they did, and then hear the narration of why they did it. And again, that's where Kristen, one of our moderators, has really done a great job of going through and making videos of a lot of the basic things you want to do in Roll20. Everything from here's how to make your first game, here's how the dynamic lighting system works, here's how the new character sheets work, all that kind of stuff. So if you're a reader, you've got the text and you've got the screenshots, but if you're more of a visual person or you just want to make sure you've got it down, there's the videos as well.
Okay. I understand there's been a forum overhaul in the last year or so.
Yeah, I think that I'm trying to remember exactly what we changed last year on the forums. I think we may have actually I can't remember when we did this, but we switched completely to a new forum system, and it was either a year or like a year and a half ago. So we were using an open source forum software called Vanilla, and then I just felt like it wasn't really integrating very well with the site, so we just kind of went back and wrote our own. And at some point we reached a critical mass where it just made sense to do that. And then that also allowed us to give every campaign its own individual forum as well, which was pretty cool. So yeah.
Do you use the site yourself? I mean, are you still gaming on using your own site?
Oh yeah. Like I said, we played The Strange last week on there. I probably play a game on Roll20 once a week if I can get on there and do that. I'd always. I think sometimes people think, oh, you work on Roll20, that means you must get to spend like 10 or 50 hours a week just gaming, right? And that's obviously not what I spend most of my time doing. I spend a lot of time in the interface, though. I mean, I spend 10, 20 hours a week just like in the interface, fixing bugs, moving things around. So I'm pretty familiar with just about every single nook and cranny. I guess having built most of it, that's probably makes sense. But yeah, I try to get in there and play games and use it for its intended purpose. But a lot of times I'm in there, just looking at it from a technical standpoint or looking at someone else's game. A lot of times I'm in there, like I said, working with other people's games and what they're trying to do and help them figure out, a problem they're having or how to do something they want to do in Roll20.
Okay. So without wanting to sort of delve into any sort of commercially sensitive information, how's it funded?
Well, it basically have what's called a freemium model, and what that means is that Roll20 is totally free to use. And it has been since day one. And essentially, when we made the Kickstarter campaign, we said, Roll20 is going to be free to use. And every single feature that we talked about in the Kickstarter campaign is still free to use today. We have never gone back and said, okay, we're gonna take away this feature you guys can already use for free. We're going to restrict you in some way. You can do unlimited campaigns, unlimited players. A very generous upload storage space allocation. You can upload plenty of maps and tokens and all that good stuff. As many characters and handouts as you want. The video chat that's included is totally free. The dice rolling system, we don't gimp in any way. The 3D dice is free. I mean, there's a whole awesome virtual tabletop that's there that anyone can use for free, and most people do use for free. On top of that, though, we went back and we thought, what are some features we could add that really advanced users might find useful, and that those people might be willing to support the site financially to help us keep doing this. And so that's when we went and added things like dynamic lighting. Our API, which is if you know programming like JavaScript, allows you to go in and do some really crazy, like you can just make the game do all kinds of stuff. You can have patrolling tokens that automatically move. Someone has some scripts that will, when you move a token, it'll check to see if you automatically trigger a trap. All kinds of stuff like that. So that's an advanced feature. That's the kind of stuff that we see as it's totally not necessary to play the game. It kind of takes it above and beyond just a table. An in-person table doesn't have an automatic dynamic lighting system, although that'd be super cool. It doesn't have a computer that can sit there and automatically do stuff for you, but that'd be really cool. So those are the kind of things that we came up with that were advanced features. And a lot of those, like the API, for example, do require more resources on our end. For every campaign that's using the API, it costs us more money, essentially. So it's kind of a combination of, people who are wanting to support further development and help us keep building it and making it better. And then also kind of an eye to the fact that, okay, these are advanced features that are really cool, but they do cost us something more than usual to help you have them. So, if you could help kick back some money, then that's, what we're going to ask you to do. So that's the idea. And the other cool thing I think is that we only really expect the GM to subscribe, and they can run as many games as they want with that one GM subscription. But when a player joins your game, they get all the benefits of your subscription automatically. So if a player is a free account, they still get to use the dynamic lighting in your campaign, obviously. But even things like we have mobile tablet support for like iPads. That's a feature that you have to pay to use. But if you're a free player and you join a GM game who has paid, a support or a mentor subscription, you get to use your tablet too. That's the kind of thing that we are not trying to figure out a way to nickel and dime every single person who might join the game. We just say, if you're a GM and you use Roll20 a lot, these might be some cool features you might want to use, and you can help support development. And then all your players are going to get all that awesome stuff as well included. So.
Okay, so it's just subscriptions that you're living on.
Yeah.
Okay, so is advertising revenue something that you think about in the future?
Right now we do have advertising on the site for free users, but it's all internal advertising. What that I mean by that is basically it's ads saying, hey, did you know you could subscribe? And hey, did you know we have dynamic lighting? And hey, check this out. We're talking about adding. We do have a marketplace where people can sell tokens and maps and that sort of thing for people to use in the games, but the majority of that goes to the people who make that art. That's not somewhere where we make a very large portion of our money. And we're thinking about adding some ads for that, but that's really, again, more to help the creators of that content. We think it's really great that there is we wanted there to be something where it provides great content for people who might be pressed for time, which I think is awesome. But on top of that, it's opened up a whole market for people who have been who love RPGs, who love creating art for them, who love creating their own maps. Some people are on there selling enough stuff that they can make a living out of it now. So that's really amazing that not only are we able to ourselves work on it full time, but now there's people out there who are creating art for the marketplace that are able to make money as well. And it just supports the hobby and lets those people do what they love. And I think the whole community is better served when we have something like that out there that, it's kind of a win-win. Creators who get to do what they love and make some money doing it, but also, now there's all this awesome content out there for people who want to use it. So, which is awesome as well.
Do you think it's a big step when websites use, say, third-party advertising?
Yeah, I think it is, and like I said, we don't do any third-party advertising right now. If we ever did it in the future, being a techie, I definitely have some concerns about privacy and whatnot that we'd want to make sure that we address. And to be honest, advertising doesn't pay nearly as well on the internet as people think it does. So people think like, oh, make a website and throw an ad up on there, and that is not how it works anymore. I don't know. I wasn't around back in the .com heyday when maybe that was like, throw up a banner ad and you're going to pay a staff of 100. So, we would do advertising if we thought it was in the best long-term interests of keeping the service running. But right now, we're comfortable with where we're at in terms of, being supported by the people who use it. And that's, I would rather be supported by people who use the program and love it than I would by third-party advertisers who, would still hopefully be relevant to what the players want, but at the same time, aren't Roll20 users, so don't necessarily care what happens on the site as much as our current subscribers do.
Now, we talked earlier on about the difference between having a hobby and having a business, and how sometimes the two can sort of merge into each other. I mean, businesses have to be dynamic; they have to grow, don't they? So,
sure.
So where do you see Roll20 fitting into that?
Well, like I said, right now our main focus is I think we kind of have a backlog of things we've been meaning to do for a long time that we haven't been able to accomplish because the workload has grown far beyond what just 3 people can do. So our main focus in the very short term is just getting those 2 other positions filled, getting that extra help on staff. I mean, essentially we're almost doubling our staff size at that point. I mean, it's it's going to be 66% larger or whatever. So it's going to be something where we're going to have a lot more bandwidth to do more awesome stuff. Um, in the long term, we have some ideas, and I don't think I'm supposed to publicly talk about them yet, unfortunately.
No,
So,
no,
but
don't breach any confidences, please.
that's okay. But I mean, we definitely have ideas, and we're going to be expanding into new places with Roll20 in the near future, I think. So, but you're right. I mean, just answering your question generally, I think that one of the things we're trying to do with Roll20 is, like I said, not only make the best virtual tabletop out there, but just make awesome RPG software in general, and also try to help the hobby grow. This was a community initiative. It was started on Kickstarter, and people who believed in us back then when we had nothing to make. We had an 8-minute demo video of something that might be awesome, maybe, and they believed in it enough and were passionate enough about it to help us get started. And we're always cognizant of that and looking to give back to that community spirit. And so that's why we do things like we give to other Kickstarter campaigns. We have a mentor token program where some of our subscribers get tokens that we actually commission from artists. So again, and then we just started that a long time ago, which was a way for us to, again, just kind of give a little bit of money back to the RPG community and support people who love making RPG art with that commission artwork. So I think growing the program is definitely on the table and something we're looking at, but then also just what are ways that we can impact the RPG hobby in a very big and positive way is something we're definitely interested in doing. We want to take all this momentum, and the more people that know about RPG games and play them, the better, in our opinion. So.
Yeah, I mean, making a difference to the community is obviously very important on a sort of personal level, isn't it? But you've said this is a business, so it's got to grow, hasn't it? So what do you see? Where do you see Roll20 going in the next year, for example?
Well, that's kind of what I said. I mean, I don't know if I can talk about the specifics about
no,
the next year.
Don't.
That's okay. I mean, we're getting ready to make some big announcements, I think, in the pretty near future, but I don't think I'm supposed to talk about them just yet. So, I'm sure if anyone watching this video like a year from now is going to be like, Psh, that wasn't that big of a deal, but I don't know. So.
Okay. So, well, let's talk about the actual the gaming again then, rather than the business model.
Okay.
There seems to be, in my personal experience, quite a big dichotomy in the industry with regards to sort of traditional role-playing games and the narrative and the storytelling games. What do you think Roll20 can offer the narrative storytelling side of the hobby?
Well, it just depends how, I think storytelling is a pretty big genre. For example, a game that we actually support fully, that we have a module for, like a one-click module for, is The Quiet Year, which it does have mechanics involved. I don't know if you've ever played it, but it's kind of a narrative map drawing game. There's a card deck you draw from that kind of helps determine what's going to happen, but it's there's no dice rolling. It's really about just telling a story together. So in that example, just using the map making features is something that you might want to do, or just using the card deck is something you might want to do. I mean, if you were doing a completely 100% theater of the mind game where you didn't want a map, you weren't going to roll dice, you didn't want cards, you didn't want character sheets, I mean, you could still use the video chat, but you could probably use the Google Plus Hangout for that too. So, I mean, I think that definitely there are. I hear from people all the time who, we don't need the map, but we love the dice system. We don't roll many dice, but we love having the virtual whiteboard. We don't use any of that stuff, but those character sheets are where it's at for us. We really just like having things to keep track of that. And like I said, there's people playing, Fate, Fiasco. There are things that I would consider much less mechanically, crunchy and that sort of thing that people still use Roll20 for. If you have a game where you're putting anything onto the tabletop in person, whether it's Fiasco with post-it notes or what have you, then Roll20 is great for that. If you're playing a game where you're sitting around on a couch chatting, and people do that with Theater of the Mind, then you don't need a tabletop in real life. You might not need a virtual tabletop, on the internet. So, but I think storytelling games, like I said, is a pretty big genre. So, I think it depends on which specific storytelling game. So.
Do you keep an eye on what's on new releases? New systems that are out there?
We do keep an eye on that kind of stuff. I don't see necessarily our role as being tastemakers, though. We don't necessarily see a new game come out and say to ourselves, oh, we love this new game, immediately put in support for this because we love it and we think everyone should be playing it. We really pay much more attention to what everyone else is saying on our forums and suggesting and emailing us with and all that kind of stuff. And so I don't necessarily know about the game when it launches that day, but a month later or 2 months later is when I'll especially hear about it, because that's how much time it takes for it to filter down, and people finally, they'll buy it and then it sits on their shelf for a month and they finally have a game
Sure,
session
yeah.
where they play it and all that kind of stuff. But we do go to Gen Con, which gives us quite a bit of exposure to the new stuff that's coming out, and what's hot and what people are playing, and we like to walk. Like, I spend a lot of my time when I go to Gen Con just walking around the trade show floor and the free game areas, and just kind of seeing what people are playing, kind of scoping out the new mechanics that it seems like mechanics kind of tend to come in waves sometimes. It's like that's really popular right now, so we're gonna start putting in lots of RPGs, which is good for us because, like I said, then we can support one mechanic, and we just supported 3 different games with it, which is awesome. So I'd say between the feedback we get from our users and then trying to go to some of the industry stuff like Gen Con, we hopefully keep a pretty good pulse on it. But
So how do you sell yourselves at Gen Con?
we don't actually do a booth or anything like that at Gen Con. We did do an ad, like a video ad, at, I believe it was 2013 Gen Con. And we saw some success with it. We had some visits from it, but Gen Con's a weird kind of beast for us, because on the one hand, everybody there is somebody who should be interested in Roll20. On the other hand, 90% of people there have in-person games that it's mostly what they're interested in. So there aren't as many people that go to Gen Con, it seems like, who are struggling to find an in-person group and want to play online. A lot of them seem like they have that kind of figured out in their lives. So we don't do a booth or anything like that. We've tried ads in the past at Gen Con, but like I said, for us it's more of just like we'll usually do a panel, similar to we'll do a Q&A panel we do one every year. And that's great because there's usually 100 people, 150 people that show up to that, and that's awesome because we can meet some of the people who love Roll20 in person, shake their hand and say hi and hear their direct feedback, which is great. But like I said, we spend a lot of time. We'll take meetings with other people in the industry. We'll kind of scope out what's coming up, and like you said, that kind of stuff. So I think Gen Con for us is less about like sell Roll20 to all the people there, and it's more like get feedback and find out what's going on in the industry. Try to make some publishing contacts so people can bring modules to Roll20, that kind of stuff. So.
In an ideal world, what sort of feedback would you be looking for from your customers?
Well, I feel like our world's pretty ideal in that right now already, because we've gotten really good feedback. Sometimes, like I said, people tend to focus sometimes too much on the specific games that they love, which is great. But I then have to take that feedback and try to compile it into something that is a bit more system independent, or fits with multiple systems, one mechanic that can work with multiple systems. But we love hearing feedback on first off, things that aren't working. That's the number. We have a bug reports forum that's always got people posting in it. Unfortunately, I wish it was completely empty, but I'm not going to claim it is. And we're always quick to hurry up and try and get there and help those people out, because we obviously want Roll20 to be bug-free and to be a great experience every time. And then we get a lot of requests from people who just have a specific game mechanic that they wish was in there for a game that they love. So we love hearing about that. And then we hear from people who just, existing features they want to be improved. I love the card deck system, but if it did X, or I love the API, but it needs Y, I need this new dice mechanic. And that's all that I love all that feedback. That feedback is all great. And one of the things we're trying to do right now is find a way to compile that feedback we just released a new version of our suggestions forum where people can actually post topics and vote on them, so we can kind of see what gets the most votes. As a way to try to cut down the number of things. People will tend to post something over and over and over again, like once a week. If it falls off the front page of the forums, they'll be like, hey, did you still remember this? Like, hey, I still want this, which is fine, but it's like we've seen that, we've got it noted, you don't have to repost it every week. So this way nothing falls off the front page if it's popular. And then it just also helps us see, okay, there's a lot of people who really want this feature, there's a lot of people who really want this feature, and we can either say, yes, we're going to do this, or no, we're not going to be able to do this because of Y, or whatever that might be. So trying to focus that feedback in a way that we can respond to it better, so that's not just 10,000 people shouting at the top of their lungs, in a room. It's okay. Let's have a nice single file, orderly line, and we can address your concerns one at a time. So that's definitely something that we're always trying to improve. Is we want people to give us feedback, but we also want to be responsive to it, and people not feel like it's just falling on deaf ears. So that's kind of what we're working on.
Information technology has advanced at an astonishing rate in the last 10 years. Where do you see virtual tabletop gaming being in 10 years' time?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. Virtual tabletop gaming in 10 years' time. There's a lot of new technology that's out there coming up that I think could really impact virtual tabletop gaming. Virtual reality helmets are the one that pop into my head, right away. I think that we're nowhere near getting to this point, but 10 years from now, when I think of what computers were like even 10 years ago, so thinking like trying to extrapolate that out 10 years from now is hard to do because it's changed so much. I can't imagine the computers of 10 years from now that make our computers today, look like what I was using when I was in high school. Like that blows my mind. But if they can get virtual reality to a point where it's, the graphics are amazing, it doesn't cause motion sickness. There's a lot of problems with it right now. But if they can get to a point where it's super, obviously that would be the penultimate, virtual tabletop gaming experience, to sit around a virtual table, completely immersed in it with your friends, seeing all of their various, faces and, just looking around and seeing all the pieces. That would be amazing. So, and, we would love to be part of that revolution, hopefully someday. So I don't know. We'll see where we're at 10 years from now, and we'll see where the technology's at. But I think I've been keeping an eye on that, the Oculus Rift and all those things coming out, but I think it's got a ways to go before it's going to be something that the majority of people are comfortable using, and it creates the experience that they want to have.
Okay. So maybe the last question for me then, Riley, to sum it up. Are you living the dream?
I'd say I'm living my dream. I don't know what the dream is, but my dream was always, even before when I was a small child, like it was just always to create something that people loved using, and to make that my career. Was just making things that people loved using, that made their lives better. And I'm not, obviously, virtual tabletop gaming isn't like curing cancer or something, so I'm not, it's not like it's the most amazing thing, in the world. But just, when we hear the feedback from people that say, my group that split apart 4 years ago is back together, thank you. My group from college is going away, thank you. And just like you started the program by saying thank you for, helping us play, across the world, in different countries. I love hearing that, and I know our whole team does, because that's why we do what we do. Honestly, I would do this job for free, so it's amazing that I can do it and still have the ability to support my family and all of that, which is awesome. And so we're just I can't believe it's happened. We'll see. Obviously you start thinking to yourself like, oh, it's gonna go away someday. That would be awful, but so far it hasn't, and hopefully it won't ever. But I'd say as of right now, I'm definitely living my dream. So
it sounds very rewarding. You're obviously massive amount of enthusiasm for it. It's almost infectious. Okay. So was there anything else you wanted to, any message that you wanted to put out to people?
Yeah, if for some reason you're watching this panel and you haven't used Roll20 before, there's probably not that many of you, but just go to roll20.net. You can create an account in about 10 seconds, find a game to play in about a minute, and be playing if you want to be, or get your whole group signed up in no time flat. And like we said earlier, it's totally free to use, so you really have no reason not to give it a shot. And other than that, just thanks to everyone who watched and who sees this later, and just thank you to the Roll20 community. I always say that because we wouldn't be where we are if it weren't for the support we got from the very earliest Kickstarter backer to the newest person who signed up this morning and is now loving it. We wouldn't be where we are without them. So.
Okay, well, as a Roll20 user myself, I can certainly second that. So, okay, well, thank you very much, Riley Dutton. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and thank you for all the work you've done and for what you've provided to the community. So here's signing off, and thank you very much.
Thank you.